I was sitting at Silverado Vineyards with a glass of 2019 Cabernet when my whole life changed. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't hunched over a computer fixing manufacturing systems or taking emergency calls about production lines going down. I was just there, watching the sun hit the Napa Valley hills, actually tasting my wine instead of chugging coffee. My name is Roy Patterson, and I'm 48 years old, Senior System Integration Director at TechFlow Systems, which basically means I'm the guy who keeps million-dollar manufacturing lines from turning into expensive junk. But that afternoon, I let myself think about what life might look like if I wasn't always fixing everyone else's problems. Then my phone buzzed. I should have ignored it. Hell, I should have thrown the thing in the nearest wine barrel. But 12 years of being on call doesn't die easy, so I looked. Glenn Harper, my boss. A 45-year-old MBA who thinks manufacturing experience means he toured a factory once in business school. What the hell do you think you're doing, Roy? Taking vacation during the Steinberg Industries audit prep? I kept my voice calm. My leave was approved 3 weeks ago, Glenn. We don't approve laziness. Consider yourself terminated, effective immediately. The world should have collapsed. Instead, I actually felt relieved. I laughed, not at him, but at myself for staying loyal to this place for so long. I hung up before he could add another threat. Trouble? The voice came from across the small table. I'd been seated here after some booking mix-up, sharing space with a guy in his late 50s who looked like he owned everything he saw. Vincent Cross, he'd introduced himself. Turned out he owned quite a bit. I raised my glass. I just got fired. Instead of the usual awkward sympathy, Vincent looked interested. Well, he said, tapping his glass to mine, then it's probably time the right people finally noticed what you can do. I didn't know it yet, but Glenn's tantrum wasn't an ending. It was the best thing that ever happened to my career. Vincent's glass was still there when my phone started buzzing again. This time it was texts from Glenn, each one more desperate than the last. Return your laptop immediately. HR will contact you about equipment recovery. Your non-compete will make sure nobody in this industry hires you again. 6 months ago, those threats would have kept me awake for weeks. But sitting here with a good bottle of wine and California sun on my shoulders, they felt like empty noise. Vincent noticed me checking the messages. Let me guess, he said calmly. He's realizing he just made a huge mistake. I set the phone face down. He thinks intimidation still works on me. Does it? I looked out at the vineyard rows going toward the hills. Not anymore. Vincent nodded like that answer told him everything. You know, he began, swirling his wine. TechFlow has been losing manufacturing contracts for 2 years. Everyone in the industry knows their operations depend on one person. I just didn't realize that person was sitting across from me. The words hit harder than they should have. After 12 years of being the invisible guy who made everything work, hearing someone actually recognize it felt strange. Roy, he continued, some companies do well because of good leadership. Others survive despite terrible leadership. TechFlow is definitely the second one, and that's not going to last. I let out a quiet laugh, because it was true. Before I could respond, a woman's voice interrupted us. Vincent? I didn't expect to see you here. Diana Wells, a manufacturing consultant I'd worked with on a few projects, stepped onto the terrace. She froze when she saw who Vincent was talking to, then saw my phone screen with Glenn's messages still showing. Her face got tight. He fired you during audit prep week? That man has no idea how screwed TechFlow is right now. She crossed her arms. Half their safety systems depend on your work. Does he even understand what he just did? My heart started beating faster, but not from fear, from understanding. No, Glenn didn't understand, and that was about to become his biggest problem. Vincent leaned back, watching me with quiet satisfaction. Sounds like your former employer is about to learn something they've avoided for years. What's that? I asked. What happens when you push away the wrong person? The evening breeze swept across the terrace. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't the overworked engineer hiding in the background. I was the piece Glenn hadn't counted on. And what happened next was up to me. By the time I got back to my hotel room, my phone looked like it had exploded. 31 missed calls, 8 voicemails, and enough emails to crash a server. I poured myself a glass of water and opened the first message from Lance Fisher, one of the few guys at TechFlow who understood how fragile our manufacturing systems really were. Please tell me Glenn didn't actually fire you. The Steinberg audit prep is falling apart. Rodriguez tried to run your safety sequence and crashed the entire production monitoring system. 3 major clients are already asking for you specifically. A second message came right after. Glenn told everyone you abandoned your responsibilities. Nobody's buying it. I closed my eyes, letting 12 years of stress settle over me, not as exhaustion this time, but as clarity. TechFlow wasn't broken because I left. It had always been broken. Me being gone just made the cracks show. Next came a voicemail from HR. The tone was stiff, corporate, almost rehearsed. Per company policy, please return all assets within 72 hours. We will also be reviewing your obligations under confidentiality and non-compete clauses. Translation: Glenn was panicking, and he needed bureaucracy to save him. But bureaucracy only works when the system underneath is stable, and TechFlow without me wasn't stable at all. I tossed the phone onto the bed and for the first time in over a decade let someone else's crisis be someone else's problem. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Diana stood there with 2 cups of coffee and a knowing smile. Figured you might need this, she said, stepping inside. Word travels fast in our industry. Half the consultants here are talking about what just happened. About me getting fired? She shook her head. About Vincent Cross mentioning you to some very important people. The respect in that room shifted when your name came up, Roy. You should have seen it. I wasn't sure what surprised me more, that Vincent had talked about me, or that industry people actually listened when he did. Diana set the coffee cups on the table. You've kept TechFlow operational for years. Everyone knows it except the guy who signed your evaluations. Her voice got softer. You're free now. What do you want to do next? The same question Vincent had hinted at earlier. The same question I'd spent years avoiding because I was too busy fixing other people's problems to think about my own future. I looked toward the window where the lights of Napa Valley sparkled in the distance. I said slowly, I want to stop just surviving and start actually building something. Diana smiled. Good, because Glenn has no idea what's coming. The morning I flew back to San Francisco, the sky was clear and bright, too peaceful for the corporate meltdown waiting in my inbox. By the time I connected to the airport Wi-Fi, the consequences of Glenn's impulsive decision were unfolding in real time. Like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion, the email trail revealed everything. Internal messages, dozens of them, painted a picture of complete operational chaos. Rodriguez, I can't complete the safety compliance check. The monitoring algorithms keep throwing error codes I don't recognize. Operations manager. That's because Roy customized half the safety architecture 3 years ago. Nobody else knows how to calibrate it. Lead technician clients are escalating. Someone needs to explain what's happening with our safety certifications. Account manager. And then this gem from Glenn himself. Find Roy's documentation. He must have left procedures behind. Nobody is irreplaceable. I almost laughed out loud at 35,000 feet. Documentation. The safety systems didn't run on documentation. They ran on 12 years of instinct, thousands of micro adjustments, and pattern recognition you only develop by troubleshooting manufacturing disasters at 3 a.m. You can't download that experience. You earn it. But the message that really got to me came from Lance. He's blaming you, telling leadership you sabotaged the workflow before leaving. People are pushing back, but it's getting ugly. I stared at the screen, pulse steady and surprisingly calm. Glenn was falling apart exactly like Vincent had predicted. The flight attendant paused beside me. Everything all right, sir? I nodded. Everything's exactly how it should be. Hours later, wheels touched down on California asphalt, and reality felt different. Heavier, but in a way that felt solid rather than crushing. I wasn't returning as the guy who absorbed everyone else's failures. I was someone with options now. As I wheeled my suitcase through arrivals, another call came in. Unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. Hello? Roy, this is Kevin Rodriguez. The voice was strained, trying to hide panic. Kevin was the automation specialist Glenn had tried to promote into my role, a decent engineer, but nowhere near ready for the responsibility he'd been handed. I'm sorry to bother you, he said, voice tight with stress, but I don't know what else to do. The safety monitoring system keeps failing. Clients want emergency meetings. Glenn is yelling at everyone, and he keeps saying, "You'll come back eventually." That last line stopped me cold. Come back. After 12 years of sacrifice, dismissal, and now public humiliation, those days were over. "Kevin," I said gently, "what you're dealing with isn't your fault. But understand this. Glenn created this mess. Not you, not me. Him." I could hear the relief and fear mixing in his voice. What should I tell them? I looked out at the California skyline, at the first sight of home in a week. "Tell them," I said quietly, "that Roy Patterson doesn't fix other people's mistakes for free anymore." And here's the part most people don't see coming. The next morning, sunlight came through my apartment windows in sharp patterns, warm, steady, and surprisingly peaceful considering the corporate wildfire consuming TechFlow systems. I set my suitcase down, plugged in my dead phone, and made coffee before checking messages. When the notifications finally loaded, they hit like a tsunami. 6 voicemails from HR, 9 from Glenn, and over 20 emails marked urgent. I ignored them all and opened Lance's message instead. Leadership tried running the quarterly safety audit this morning. The system locked up twice, then the data integration crashed completely. 2 major clients are threatening to suspend contracts unless you're reinstated or replaced with someone of equal expertise. Spoiler alert, that person doesn't exist. A follow-up arrived seconds later. Glenn's in full panic mode. He's trying to rewrite history, claiming you left without proper transition. A laugh escaped me. 12 years of emergency repairs, weekend calls, and 60-hour weeks, but apparently I was the unreliable one. My phone rang. Another unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, expecting another HR script. But the transcription preview made me set down my coffee. "This is Patricia Stone from the TechFlow Board of Directors. We need to discuss recent operational developments." The board. They never contacted anyone below VP level. The fact they reached out to me directly meant the panic had spread all the way to the top. Before I could process that, the phone rang again. This time, a number I recognized. "Vincent," I answered immediately. "Back in civilization." "Already?" His voice had that calm confidence that made chaos sound optional. "Just landed yesterday. My inbox looks like a war zone," he chuckled. "I spoke to 2 of TechFlow's former clients this morning. Both mentioned you specifically, and both expressed serious concerns about operational stability since your unexpected departure." Unexpected. Corporate speak never ceased to amaze me. "I'm not involved with TechFlow anymore," I said. "They'll have to work with whoever Glenn chose." "That's the problem," Vincent replied. "They don't want whoever Glenn chose. They want continuity. They want competence. They want you." I took a slow breath. "I'm not breaking any contracts or going after anyone." "You don't need to," he said. "When leadership fails, clients follow stability. And from what I hear, you were the only stable element TechFlow ever had." His words weren't flattery. They were business analysis. A pause stretched between us. "Roy," he continued, voice lower now, "I'd like to meet again. There are opportunities opening up, ones that match your actual value, not the level they kept you trapped at." A sharp knock interrupted him. Quick and impatient, my pulse stayed steady. Not fear this time, but something colder, more controlled. "I should call you back," I said to Vincent. "Be careful," he replied quietly. When I opened the door, Glenn Harper stood there like his world was burning down. Which, in a way, it was. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie crooked, and his eyes had that frantic look of a man who'd spent 48 hours losing control of something he never really controlled in the first place. "Roy," he said, trying to sound calm, "we need to talk." There was a time when those words would have made my chest tight, made me feel small. "Not today." "I don't think we do," I replied evenly. He pushed past me into the apartment without being invited. The arrogance was familiar, but the desperation underneath was brand new. "For 12 years, he began sharply, "I've counted on your reliability, your consistency, your—" "My silence," I offered. He flinched, a small twitch that could have been guilt or rage. "This isn't the time for attitude," he snapped. "The audit is collapsing. The entire safety workflow is compromised. Clients are furious." "They're not furious," I corrected. "They're responding to instability." "Instability you created," His jaw tightened. I didn't create anything. You left. You fired me, I reminded him quietly. He started pacing like a man replaying every mistake in real time. Look, maybe I acted too quickly. Too quickly? I raised an eyebrow. You called my vacation irresponsible, insulted my work ethic, then terminated me mid-sentence. That's not quick, Glenn. That's who you are. He stopped pacing, really looking at me for the first time since he arrived, like he was realizing I wasn't the same guy he'd been pushing around for 12 years. You need to come back, he said finally. The words weren't a request, they were a plea wrapped in a command. No, the simplicity of it stunned him. You don't want to hear my offer? There's no offer you could make that would be worth it. He ran both hands through his hair, fingers actually shaking. I can fix this situation. The board wants answers. They want to know why the only person who understood our manufacturing systems is suddenly gone. I tilted my head. What did you tell them? His silence was answer enough. Glenn, I continued, voice steady, you didn't lose control because I left. You lost it because you never had it. Confusion flickered in his eyes. He hadn't heard about Vincent yet, or the conversations already reshaping my future. You're really not coming back, he said. Not a question this time. No. His shoulders sagged. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, hollow, inevitable. He walked toward the door, paused, and said without turning around, They're going to blame me for this. They should, I replied. He nodded once and walked away. The silence after Glenn left wasn't peaceful. It felt charged, like the moment before everything changes. I stood in my living room for several minutes, processing what had just happened. 12 years of being talked over, overlooked, treated like replaceable equipment. And now the man who once mocked my need for vacation had shown up trembling at my door. Not because he lost an employee, but because he finally realized he'd lost the foundation holding his department together. My phone lit up again. Board of Directors, incoming call. There it was, the next domino. I answered, calm and composed. This is Roy. Mr. Patterson, this is Patricia Stone. We need clarification on several urgent operational matters regarding your departure. No hostility in her tone, just exhaustion and the sharp edge of corporate survival instinct. Of course, I said. How can I help? She let out a breath. We weren't informed of any performance issues until this morning. We were told you left without notice. I was terminated, I corrected gently, without cause, during approved leave. Heavy silence, damning silence. Another board member chimed in. Is it accurate that no one else has full access to the safety monitoring architecture? Yes, I replied, because Glenn consistently refused to allocate resources for proper cross-training. I documented everything, but documentation can't substitute for hands-on experience. Another pause. Then Patricia spoke again, quieter. Mr. Patterson, would you consider consulting work, strictly transitional? We're willing to compensate appropriately. My breath caught, not from temptation, but from watching the power dynamic shift in real time. They no longer saw me as an employee. I was an asset they were afraid to lose completely. But I'd learned something important sitting on that vineyard terrace. Freedom isn't a gift someone gives you. It's a choice you make for yourself. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I'm not available for consulting at this time. Papers rustled. Someone took a sharp breath. Panic leaked through their professional composure. May we ask why? Because, I answered, I'm exploring opportunities where my expertise won't be treated as an afterthought. The board said nothing. The truth had landed. We ended the call politely, but I knew what came next. Blame shifting, political scrambling, damage control that wouldn't control anything. I set my phone down and let the moment breathe. Then it buzzed again. A text from Vincent. If you're free this afternoon, I'd like you to visit our Oakland facility. I think we're ready to discuss specifics. My pulse steadied. Not racing, not anxious. Ready. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't being pulled towards someone else's crisis. I was stepping toward my own future. Vincent Cross's Oakland headquarters looked nothing like TechFlow's industrial wasteland. Clean architecture, collaborative spaces, the quiet hum of people solving problems instead of creating them. It felt like the opposite of everywhere I'd worked for the past decade. A receptionist greeted me by name. Welcome, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Cross is expecting you. Expecting, not squeezing me between emergencies, not summoning me to fix disasters. Expecting. Vincent's office overlooked the bay, and when he stood to greet me, his expression was confident and satisfied. "Roy," he said, shaking my hand, "I'm glad you came." "I'm curious," I answered honestly. "Good. Curiosity usually means someone's ready to step up to a bigger game." What followed wasn't an interview, it was recognition. He asked about my manufacturing automation work, my safety system designs, my ability to stabilize failing operations without support or resources. Not once did he ask why I'd taken vacation. Not once did he imply my worth was conditional. When I finished explaining a complex production line integration, he leaned back, impressed. "You weren't just keeping TechFlow operational," he said. "You were performing at an executive level while being compensated like a mid-level technician." I didn't deny it. "And they fired you," he continued, "which conveniently freed you up for us." He slid a folder across the desk. Not thick, just substantial enough to matter. "Vice President of Manufacturing Operations," he said. "Full autonomy, your own team, compensation that reflects what you've actually been doing for years." I took a breath, not because I doubted myself, but because the offer aligned perfectly with the future I'd been too exhausted to imagine. I opened the folder. My next chapter stared back at me. "I'm not asking for a decision today," Vincent added. "I just want you to understand that you're not someone who needs permission to lead anymore. You're someone whose leadership creates stability wherever you go." He was right, and I knew it. I closed the folder carefully. "I won't need long to decide," I said. A slight smile touched his lips. "I had a feeling you wouldn't." As I stood to leave, he added, "Oh, one more thing. TechFlow's board reached out to us this morning." I stopped. "About what?" "They wanted to know if we've been in discussions with you." "And what did you tell them?" Vincent's expression got serious. "That it's none of their business." By the next morning, news had traveled faster than wildfire. I woke to a string of messages, some panicked, some apologetic, some simply stunned. Lance's message made me sit up. The safety audit system crashed again at 6 a.m. 4 clients demanded emergency meetings. Someone leaked that you were fired during approved vacation. It's everywhere, Roy. Industry blogs, LinkedIn posts, everywhere. I opened my laptop. There it was, splashed across manufacturingtoday.com. TechFlow systems in crisis after sudden departure of lead safety engineer. The article was brief, but devastating. Industry sources report that the company's critical safety monitoring systems were maintained primarily by a single engineer whose recent termination has raised serious questions about operational oversight and management competence. They didn't name me directly. They didn't have to. Anyone in manufacturing automation knew exactly who it meant. My phone buzzed again. Another email from the board, more desperate than the last. "Mr. Patterson, we request an immediate meeting. The situation has escalated significantly. They weren't calling for clarification anymore, they were calling for rescue. But I wasn't their rescue. Not anymore." Before I could reply, another message appeared from an unknown address. "They're trying to pin this on you, but the truth is out there. Don't let them drag you back down." No signature, but I recognized the writing. Kevin Rodriguez. Even he could see what was happening. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Lance stood there, exhausted but determined. "I shouldn't be here," he said quickly, "but you deserve to know what's really going on." "Know what?" He stepped inside and lowered his voice. "The board confronted Glenn yesterday morning. The whole meeting was recorded. Someone leaked the transcript." My heart went still. He handed me his phone. Lines of text filled the screen. "Board member, why did you terminate the only engineer capable of maintaining our safety systems during audit season?" Glenn, "I believed he was undermining my authority." Board member, "Or did he simply make you look incompetent by comparison?" The transcript continued, each exchange tearing down Glenn's position until the final blow. "Board chair, you compromised our operational integrity over personal ego. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending formal review." I handed the phone back. "It's over for him," Lance said quietly. I nodded. It should have been over years ago. "Are you thinking about going back?" he asked carefully. "No," I said without hesitation. His shoulders relaxed. Relief, not disappointment. Good, he said. You were never meant to be hidden away in that place. That afternoon, I drove back to Vincent's office. This time, I had an answer. I accept, I told him simply. He smiled and handed me a pen. Welcome to the team, Roy. As I signed the contract, Vincent added, your first assignment is building a safety systems division. You'll be mentoring 6 junior engineers. Think you can handle that? I thought about Kevin Rodriguez, struggling with systems he didn't understand. About Lance Fisher, trying to hold things together with duct tape and hope. About all the young engineers who'd come after me, hoping someone would teach them what they really needed to know. I can handle that, I said. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my new office overlooking San Francisco Bay. My team just finished a major safety integration for an automotive client. Flawless implementation, ahead of schedule. Kevin Rodriguez called me yesterday. He landed a position with a company that actually trains their people. Lance Fisher is interviewing with us next week. Glenn Harper? Last I heard, he's selling insurance. TechFlow Systems? They're still looking for someone to replace me. Good luck with that. I learned something important that day in Napa Valley. Getting fired doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to start writing the chapter you were meant to live. If you're stuck in a job where they don't see your value, where they take your expertise for granted, where they treat you like you're replaceable, maybe it's time to let them find out just how wrong they are. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming who you were always supposed to be. How did my story hit you? Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below.